I'm going to attempt to do a screen share because I brought a little presentation. So let me see if this works. Are folks able to see that okay?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for having me today. I'm really excited to present our regional electric vehicle market acceleration and EV infrastructure build out project. I've got lots of partners, and I'll try to kind of go over who's all involved in this. And I will say, Heidi, that I'll talk a little bit about the infrastructure build out planning, but I also brought you guys some information from a study I've been working on, which provides more background generally on electric vehicles. So you're going to get quite a bit today, and I'll try to save room for questions. So maybe about 15 minutes, hopefully 12:45. Does that sound good? Okay, so here I go. And if you have questions as I go through, please just jump in and let's make this informal. So just to get the juices flowing, here's some information. Not Northeast Iowa, but more national and global. So electric vehicles are on the rise, and especially just in the last couple of years. So national trends, if you're looking at them, sales of electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles between 11 and 19 total about 1.4. But they expect, and there's about 1 million on the roads today, but they expect that to rise to 18 million just by 2030. So we're going to see some exponential growth there in the next few years. Global trends, the existing numbers are larger. China's definitely on the forefront of that. Norway, if you guys saw that ad during the Super Bowl, and there's some other countries that are making some real progress. So global EV sales are expected to increase from 10 million in 2025 to 56 million by 2040, with 125 million globally on the road by 2030. So we're going to see some quick growth here in the coming years. And it does matter to even us in rural Iowa. So, and if you look at the growth of EVs in just Iowa, the numbers are quite shocking, but you have to keep in mind that we started with very little. So this data set's fun. So combined battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicle sales in Iowa increased almost 2,000% from 2011 to 2018, but we started with very little in the downside of that. So, and the increase during that same period for just battery electric was over 24,000%. From 2 in 2011 up to 400, almost 500 a day. So you can see that we started with very little, and it's just in recent years that we are seeing growth, but it is happening. You know, one interesting thing about the electric vehicle market is that we have, and when I say that too, I mean drivers. So who is driving it right now? And we have a bit of a bubble here in the Winneshiek County area. I will say specifically around the Decorah zip code. This is a data set showing electric vehicle and plug-in electric vehicle registrations in Iowa by county. It's a 2019 data set, so it's a little old, a couple years old, but you will see that Winneshiek County is in the top 10, and it's competitive with Polk County and Johnson and some other really large counties. So for a rural area, we are somewhat trend setting for this particular issue. If you look at just at that same data set, but per capita, we are one of the top 3 in the state. Counties who are incorporating these new vehicles. So I think we can definitely make a case that it matters to us even in Northeast Iowa. This is, for our study, I will say that we're covering more than just Winneshiek County. It's a regional study. We look at Fayette, Clayton, Allen McKee, Chickasaw, and Howard as well. And their numbers are a little bit less with regards to registrations, but we're hoping to work on this issue for our region. For our project, that was kind of my quick introduction to get you excited. For a project, I'll give you some background. I'm a regional planner with Upper Explorerland Regional Planning Commission. I've been working closely with the Winneshiek Energy District on this project and what it's going to be and pursuing grant funding. We also have some involvement from Luther College. Steve Holland, who I see is on the call. And then also we're going to try to work with Resource Conservation Development on a study component. We've gotten some funding from the Allen McKee Clayton Electric Cooperative, Northeast Iowa Funders Network, and also at Upper Explorerland, we're also the regional planning affiliation for the Department of Transportation, and we have used some of those funds to support the project. So a little bit about our project. I will be doing a study, and a lot of what I'm sharing with you today is some of those early findings from the study, looking at electric vehicle growth trends, benefits, rural considerations, understanding the current market and infrastructure in Northeast Iowa. Not much, but we're going to try to understand it. Looking into EV technology, that would be the vehicles, but also the chargers. And models for public electric vehicle charging, which is something we really want to grow. Understanding electric vehicle incentives, policy and ordinance. We have engaged Steve Holland from Luther College to look a little bit more in depth, but just still from a review standpoint of economic costs and benefits for EV adoption. And specifically, does that vary by different users and communities and other considerations. We may be working with Josh Dansdale at Northeast Iowa Resource Conservation Development to try to understand what this means for visitation and tourism, especially with regards to building out EV chargers. So what could be the positive benefits of planning EV chargers for tourism? We just began a conversation with Northeast Iowa Community College about EV training. So that is a real gap right now. They do have some existing training embedded in like their automotive courses, industrial courses, but we want to find out, how do we upscale that? How do we train the trainers? How do you do credit and non-credit? So for non-credit specifically, we want to serve training to independent auto servicers, first responders, fleet managers, and others. So this is something that isn't provided too much in our region yet, and we're going to try to tackle that with this project. One of the exciting things that I've been helping facilitate is a regional EV work group, and I think we are interested in more people. We've had pretty good involvement from economic developers, energy districts, utilities, some other energy stakeholders, and some communities, and we're trying to engage others. So maybe out of this too, if you're curious about our regional EV work group, let me know. But we are looking at information that we're researching, and we're going to begin to plan EV charging corridors across Northeast Iowa, set some goals and strategies for the region around EV build out, and probably eventually coordinate some EV outreach and events. So, and we also are discussing EV technical assistance, which will be provided by Winneshiek Energy District, hopefully in the future to some employers and some communities to help them implement EV. So that's kind of the background on the project. Before I kind of go over some of the fun information from my study, I'll stop and see if there are any questions. Nothing? Okay, I'm going to keep moving. I also saw that Amy Buska is on this call, and there might be a few others from our EV work group, and I want to thank them for their involvement so far and encourage them to jump in too if they ever have some thoughts here. So I kind of am walking in this assuming that everyone knows that EV stands for electric vehicle, but it doesn't hurt to do a quick little rundown of the vocabulary here. So when we refer to PEV, plug-in electric vehicle, that is basically a vehicle that has an onboard rechargeable battery that stores energy to power electric motors. Battery electric is powered solely by a battery, while a plug-in hybrid vehicle is powered by a battery or internal combustion engine, and you plug in the battery to charge it. And then we see hybrid electric vehicles all over the roads in a lot higher volume right now. That's powered by an ICE and an electric motor that uses battery storage. And regenerative braking helps power the battery. So there's a lot of different benefits for electric vehicles. This is my really quick rundown. We don't have a lot of time today, but we all hear about environmental benefits. So we could potentially reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, especially if we begin using renewable energy to produce electricity for these vehicles. And then there's also, we're attempting to deal with climate change very quickly here. We have to address that issue. And this is one manner in which we can try to reduce emissions and specifically tailpipe emissions from vehicles, which is a large contributor. There are economic benefits as well, though. That's the great thing. Jolene Jansen of the Clayton County Energy District always says where green meets green. So electricity costs less than gasoline per gallon equivalent. We've heard time and again that these vehicles have less maintenance requirements than an internal combustion engine because there's fewer moving parts and fluids to change, so you could save money there. There are more and more today programs and tax incentives to help get going. Not a lot in Iowa yet, but there are some, and we're trying to understand those with our studies. And there's some other benefits you wouldn't think of. For example, instead of having to always fill up your car at a gas station, you could do it in your garage overnight or while you're working during the day. And also we're looking at a lot of communities around here thinking about how there's benefits for, like I mentioned, tourism. Specifically, rural drivers can benefit because we travel further, we repair our vehicles more, and we spend more on gas. So the financial benefits for us could be much more. And when we have more money in the pocket, it benefits our rural economies. One other fun thing is that we just have more space. So the logistics of planning charging locations, for example, might be a little bit easier for us, depending on where we're looking. There are some challenges though for rural build out of electric vehicle infrastructure and market. One is range anxiety. So that's basically, we have right now, there's a big distance between public charging locations. And so far, EV batteries can only go so far, I guess about an average 200 miles. So people are concerned about buying an electric vehicle if when they're out and about, they can't charge it. They can certainly charge it at home if they get that set up. But what happens when you're traveling farther distances? And new charging stations aren't all that cheap right now, at least for a lot of small rural communities that have to pay that cost because there's not a lot of grants available currently. Also, not a lot of auto dealers are currently providing electric vehicles. We did a little review for the study and found very few. You'll sometimes find some used ones, or you'll find dealers willing to bring something in, order it from someplace else. But yeah, they don't have a lot on the lot right now. And also just the cost of electric vehicles can be inhibiting with if build out there. And one other consideration is our weather. So we have cold weather, for a good part of the year, and we've heard that can really affect using these vehicles and draining them. So a little bit closer look at emissions benefits. I thought we could give you some interesting data here. Transitioning to a light duty fleet of electric vehicles could reduce US foreign oil dependence by 30 to 60%. And greenhouse gas emissions by 30 to 45%. That depends on the mix of technologies. That's out of energy.gov. But still, those numbers seem pretty significant. And you have to consider with emissions and how to impact that, you have to consider direct emissions and well-to-wheel emissions. So direct emissions is going to be your tailpipe emissions and other things like what comes out during the fueling process. And plug-in electric vehicles produce lower tailpipe emissions than conventional vehicles, hand down. And when it comes to all electric vehicles, they produce zero tailpipe emissions. But you have to consider well-to-wheel emissions. So that's going to be fuel production, processing, distribution, and then finally use. So we have to very carefully with EV build out, you have to think about where your electricity source is. So emissions are going to come from non-renewable energy production. This graphic right here looks at CO2 emissions by sector in the state of Iowa. And you can see the light blue right here on the top is just from electric power generation. And the next biggest contributor to CO2 emissions is at the bottom, transportation. So if we delve into EV market build out and we think about tailpipe emission reduction only, we're going to be forgetting that we need to deal with this light blue color. So it's important to think about electricity source and then also actually reducing tailpipe emissions. This right here is electricity sources and emissions specifically for Iowa. So on the left here, we have a description of our biggest sources of electricity right now. I think, I don't have the date on this, unfortunately, but I do have the link if you want to look at that more closely. Right now, I thought this was kind of cool. The majority of our electricity is coming from wind. And then the second highest is coal. So one of the clean to one of the dirtiest. And but that if you account for those percentages, this graphic on the left or right is showing what the annual emissions per vehicle would be based on gasoline or all electric. So gasoline, it would be over 11,000 pounds of CO2 equivalent emissions. and based on electricity sources. And for all electric, it would be only about 4,000 pounds. So about a 7,000 pounds difference. So you can see that we could definitely impact emissions by implementing all electric here in Iowa. Someone did bring it to my attention that this is a statewide data set, but it could vary quite a bit depending on your region where you get your electricity from. So I will say that. But as a way of understanding the large picture, I thought it was useful. So a closer look at EV financial benefits. EVs are efficient. How the actual technology runs is efficient. So electric drivetrains are mechanically more efficient than internal combustion engines. EVs convert 59 to 62% of the electric energy from the grid to power at the wheels. But conventional gasoline vehicles only convert 17 to 21%, so less than half of the energy stored in gasoline, or less than half of the others, of the energy stored in gasoline to power at the wheels. So we have the technology, the mechanics being more efficient. Another thing to consider is electricity is cheaper. So this graphic here is looking at the cost per gasoline gallon equivalent of fuel sources. And it looks from around 2000 to 2020. So you can see that the gasoline's kind of these colors I thought were kind of close and hard to understand, but I believe gasoline is that medium purple in the middle of the graph. So that's averaging about $2.59 in that 20-year period per gallon gasoline equivalent. And then electricity is averaging only $1.25. So quite a bit cheaper to use electricity as your fuel source. And because it's more efficient, the mechanics are more efficient, you're going to use less of it to get how far you want to go. So this is a really little general analysis, and it's going to vary depending completely on what type of electric vehicle you're considering. But I wanted to give you an idea of what does this mean for fuel cost savings. So the top one is, let's look at electric vehicle fuel cost. So average cost per kilowatt hour of electricity in Iowa as of October of 2020 was a little over 12 cents, 12.5 cents. Now, if you just look at like a Nissan Leaf, one type of electric vehicle, it needs around 30 kilowatt hours to go 100 miles. So based on that 12.51 cents per kilowatt hour cost, that vehicle would pay about $3.75 to go 100 miles. If you want to understand that for a full year, you can multiply it at an average of like 15,000 miles. You know, it's going to totally depend on how much people are driving, but that result would be $562 per year for a Nissan Leaf. Now let's think about an internal combustion engine's fuel cost. I will say again, this is a complete, this is complete average. I tried to research what it would be an average cost to go so many miles for ICE. It varies so much by vehicle. But one information source I came up with I was able to come up with a number of $10.08 to go 100 miles. So just for the sake of this calculation. So a year of driving based on this for 15,000 miles would be $1,500 a year. So just this simple little, and please don't take this information and go anywhere with it, because like I say, it's all averages and depending on what source I got the numbers from, but it does tell you that there's definitely a potential to save quite a bit of money by driving an EV. Potentially the ICE costs are 3 times more than electricity costs. So that could really make a difference for rural drivers and different kind of groups within that. And I will say that Steve Holland, who's helping us with kind of the economic review part of this, will probably have a much more, by the end of our project, a much more helpful kind of review of the financial and economic considerations. But I wanted to have something fun for sharing this today. So what do we know electric vehicles are coming, but what's really out there right now? Trying to understand that. It's easiest to find national level data right now. This is U.S. Department of Energy data, and it's illustrating the growth of EVs by model year. And it's just looking between 1995 and 2019. So, and you can see it's interesting. There was a little bit of growth there in the late 1990s and early 2000s, but very few models overall. So you can see that what this is showing is the year, and then below that, the actual number of models available that year. But you can see just since you can see since about 2013 or 2014 that we've started to see some exponential growth in the number of models. And the most recent year I have is 2019, approximately 72 models. This is a different data set from the Electric Power Research Group, 2020. And this said that there were about 63 electric vehicle models in the US through the end of 2020. So a little bit different data than the previous slide. But what I thought was interesting was that they projected that there would be 127 models just within 3 years. So basically, we're tripling the amount of EV models available in the next 2 years. So really, we're seeing some fast growth here. And those models by 2023 could include a variety of things: SUVs, a lot of SUVs, 56, sedans, also pretty high on the list. Hatchbacks, luxury, minivans, a smaller amount of minivans and pickup trucks, and so on. So, when we think about this for Northeast Iowa, we have to think about what do people actually want to buy here. And I'm gonna skip ahead to this graph and then come back. This is a little chart showing what the top 10 vehicle models are that are owned in rural America. So this is a national data set, keep that in mind. But you will see that in this chart, and this is from 2017, those are all medium and heavy duty pickup trucks. And I think a lot of people around here see pickup trucks. So the question when we're thinking about, what's going to be available and what people actually want to buy in Northeast Iowa, that's a conversation to have, especially when I think we're going to try to get some car dealers into our work group to really chat with them about this. As these pickup trucks become available, 6 by 2023, are you then going to try to focus a little bit more on getting these out on the lot? This is an interesting chart. It shows you from 2011 to 2019, the models, the plug-in electric vehicle models by year that have come out, and then how many were sold. It's a lot to look at right now, and I'm happy to share this presentation afterwards. But one thing to note is there are definitely some heavyweights here. So Tesla shows up over and over again, and I will say that these are for models that sold more than 10,000 in that time frame from 2011 to 2019. So Tesla is a big one. You can see just their newest models here in 2018 and 2019, really big numbers. And they're the only one that has grown consistently, but I will say that's a shorter time frame for this particular Model 3 than some of these ones like the Chevy Volt that's been out since 2011 and has had some ups and downs. But yeah, I thought this was interesting to kind of see some of the manufacturers out there already providing these. I didn't provide here because I know we were trying to keep track of time, but as part of this research, we took a look at what Northeast Iowa drivers are driving. And I know that Chevy Volts are popular, Nissan Leafs are popular, also Chevy Bolts. So just to give you an idea, you can also research looking at electric vehicle registrations and see what people here are driving. And I think that's also another thing to have a conversation with auto dealers about. If you look at a national data set from the US Department of Energy, they overall identify 532 electric vehicles, and that's a combination of hybrid, electric, and then plug-in hybrids. And the hybrid electric is by far the most popular right now, but you'd be surprised by what's out there. I mean, they've got vans, cabs, street sweepers, refuse trucks, tractors, shuttle buses, transit buses, school buses. So there is quite a variety of electric vehicles out there for the different needs. And right now, the highest number of electric vehicles varieties or types are sedans, transit buses, and SUVs. But I think there aren't any pickups, so their pickups are just coming out for all battery. And then the highest number of plug-in hybrids are sedans, SUVs, and pickups. So it's something to consider, and I was curious to learn more about why, for example, pickups aren't provided electric yet, or why that's just happening now. And I couldn't tell you more about it at this point, but it is interesting to see how the different vehicle technologies are expanding for different uses. And just a little bit, I thought I don't want to dwell on this, but some key considerations for, the actual technology. One is the range issue for driving an electric vehicle. So generally, electric vehicles have a shorter range per charge than comparable conventional vehicles have per tank of gas. So through 2021, the average range for battery electric vehicles is going to be about 252 miles. But conventional cars in the US, this was another data set that I had a really hard time finding. But one said that conventional cars in the US tend to have a top range between more around 300 or 400 miles. So a family's planning on whether they would like to buy an EV or not, or a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, and they're going, well, you know, we have a lot of different types of trips. Some of them are long. It's easier to have a conventional car. So, and then there's, don't forget range anxiety, which again, that is how many chargers are out there and how far apart are they? There's a lot of anxiety in rural areas about buying electric vehicles because of that. Then there's the battery issue. So batteries are the energy storage system for electric vehicles. Most of them use lithium ion batteries. And generally, until recently, there's been very low battery storage capacity. And then battery costs have been very high. And this has all contributed to fear of using electric vehicles and to higher purchase costs for electric vehicles. But there's some good news. Electric vehicle range is rising and electric vehicle costs are falling. And that is due to battery storage volumes increasing in recent years, which allows then for greater ranges for the vehicles. They have a bigger storage of energy. And so the average range of battery electric vehicles is projected to increase then from 235 miles in 2020 to 279 miles in 2023. And I imagine that continues to go up, even though I don't have a specific projection. At the same time, battery prices per kilowatt hour are going down, which is another really important thing. So, and what this is doing is this is increasing battery demand and then also improving electric vehicle affordability. So apparently $100 per kilowatt hour is the lithium ion storage battery's magic number. So once that's what it costs for that battery, at that point, the upfront cost for a passenger electric vehicle will be the same as or even less than an ICE. So I tried to come up with some interesting data to show you that. This is a volume weighted battery pack price by sector, real $20. So we have to keep in mind that battery prices are going to, for these vehicles are going to vary by sector and type of vehicle. So if you look at the top of this chart, plug-in hybrid passenger vehicle battery price is still at $359 per kilowatt hour. But way at the bottom end, and this is just in China, electric bus and commercial vehicle price is 100, closer to that 100 mark, 105. But that second one up, battery electric passenger vehicle right now, an average of 126. So it's going to depend on the type of use for the battery. But overall, we see that definitely the price on average are going down when you look at a volume weighted data set. So this chart on the left is showing in 2010, the price per kilowatt hour, which was, oh my goodness, looks like over $1,000 per kilowatt hour in 2010. And then by 2020, so 10 years later, it has consistently dropped, and now the average is around $137 per kilowatt hour. That's a 90% drop in 10 years. So again, this is really improving the outlook for the purchasing of electric vehicles. And then lastly, our storage volume is increasing. So this is what this chart is showing. Battery storage volume is increasing, and therefore gigawatt hours supplied for this technology is increasing. So on the left here of this chart in 2010, less than a half of a gigawatt hour of batteries was supplied. That, and this is for EV and also energy other energy storage. And then by 2020, the total was 526 gigawatt hours, which is over 1,000 times as much. So in 10 years, 1,000 times as much is being provided through these batteries. So we see demand going up and volume in the batteries being increased. So this is all good news for the future of this technology. I think I have a little time here to talk about electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So, you know, as more drivers purchase electric vehicles, there's also a growing need for what we call electric vehicle supply equipment, or AKA chargers. And this is what is going to put the energy into the battery so these vehicles can drive. And where you have this charging infrastructure is really going to impact who can purchase an electric vehicle and also where they will travel. So in our area, we're thinking about not just who's driving right now, who's getting an EV registered in our area, but also who's going to be visiting us and will need to charge. So a little bit about charging levels. You want to consider when we're thinking about what level of charging to provide, what's the purpose of charging? We can think of it as main harbor. So that's going to be charging at or near a home or workplace, someplace you're spending a lot of your day. Or is it more of a destination charging? So maybe people are charging when they're parked somewhere while an activity takes place, when they're at a restaurant or when they're shopping, maybe in a downtown area. And then there's the range extension type of charging. So this is similar to fueling stations today. So how do we get vehicles rapidly recharged during a long journey? And depending on who you're trying to serve with these different charging needs might influence what type of electric vehicle charger you install. Also, you want to think about whether it's a public charging or a private charging situation. A lot of the private charging can be slower, like especially if you think about your home and you have like a whole night to charge, versus if you're in those public locations and people are moving, coming and going fairly quickly, you want to look at more powerful and faster charging. So a little bit about charging levels. There's level 1 and level 2. And this is when you start to search to purchase a charger, this is what you're going to be considering. And level 1 and level 2, that's providing alternating current to the electric vehicle. And then an onboard charger converts it to direct current to charge the batteries. And all EVs can charge at level 1 and level 2. As a matter of fact, most EVs will come with a level 1 cord set that can plug into a 120 volt household outlet. However, it's some pretty slow charging. 2 to 5 miles of range per hour of charging. So you got to plan ahead for that. But this could be good for residential and workplace charging, or I guess used for residential and workplace charging. Level 2 is a little bit better. So yeah, that would be a 240 volt charging outlet needed, or 208 in commercial settings, I think. And you can get those installed at your home as well. And there's actually some incentives available for that. And this is a little bit better and has largely been used for, again, residential, workplace, and a lot of public charging situations. It's going to add 10 to 20 miles of range per hour. So you're going to get a little further, you're going to get further faster with level 2 charging. But the best thing that I think probably we're all aiming for is DC fast charging. So this is where a charger is located off board the vehicle, and the charger is going to provide DC electricity directly to the electric vehicle's battery. So this is going to have the highest power output and provides the most charge in the shortest amount of time. Most, but not all, electric vehicles are equipped for this. That's one thing to keep in mind. It can't be right now, it can't be installed at homes. And it is very ideal for public charging when we consider the different reasons for charging. And it is being used by fleets more and more today. I just thought this was an interesting chart or graph. It shows electric vehicle station introduction by charging level from 2009 to 2019. And that purple there is the level 2 chargers. So by and far, the level 2 chargers have been the highest implemented over that 10 years. And you can see just in recent years, 2018, 2019, that orange, which is the DC fast chargers, is growing. The implementation of those is growing, and it will continue to grow because of how fast it can provide charging. This is just a fun little pyramid to show you the different charging locations and then the charging level needs. So when you're looking at those residential settings on the bottom of the pyramid, maybe for employees at workplaces, that level 1 or 2 is going to work probably okay, at least right now. But when you get up to fleets and you have, urban metro areas, then you really need to be considering the DC fast and how to get those incorporated. Across the US, there are over 100,000 charging outlets. That's the actual plugs. And then over 40,000 fueling stations right now. This is as of March 2021, so fairly recent information from the Department of Energy here. The level 2 is 80% of that. So right now it's a lot cheaper to do a level 2 charger and logistically a little easier. In Iowa, there were 460 charging outlets through the same date. 313 level 2s and 222 stations overall. A station can have multiple ports, so multiple outlets. Iowa right now is 34th in the US for the number of stations. So we're not the worst, but we're definitely not up there with California right now. And I do have some of that information available if anybody is interested, the actual highest ranking states. So this is what some of the networks that provide electric vehicle electric vehicle charging capabilities, provide online apps where you can see where these are located. This is a plug share map one of the networks showing the level 2 chargers in our 5-county or 6-county region that's covered by our study. So it is difficult to determine exactly whether all these are for public use when we're thinking about serving that purpose. For example, some of the car dealerships, I think they have accessible charging, but I'm not sure you can just roll up anytime you want and charge if you're like a traveler through our area. I know, like, for example, the Decor Bank and Trust charger is really focused on employees, but I think you could maybe call and try to use their charger. And then there's others like the Fairfield Inn and Suites in Decorah and the West Union Courthouse, which are clearly are intended for public use. But overall, we're looking at a pretty small handful of public charging available right now. A little bit about with regards to charging infrastructure, considering power and range, which is going to be a really important consideration for purchasing these. A vehicle's charging time is going to depend on the state of charge of the battery when you roll up to the charger, the power coming from the charger itself, and then the rate the vehicle can actually accept that power. This is a nice little breakdown here of between level 1, level 2, and DC fast charging. And then considering supply power, that means the charger, the power coming out of the charger, and then the actual kilowatt capability of the onboard charger in the vehicle and what that means for charge time. So for example, level 1 chargers, if your supply power is going to be lower for level 1, is it's based on volts and amps, is 120 volts, 20 amps. And then if you had an onboard charger at 1.4 kilowatts, that would only be giving you 4 miles per hour of charging. But if you had a little bit bigger onboard charger, 1.9 kilowatts, that's more of a 6 mile per hour. And you can see how it goes down here. So AC level 2, you have the power supply is going to be more. And then your onboard chargers are going to have, if they have these different kilowatt capabilities, your charging time is going to, or your miles provided per charging time is going to continually increase. And eventually with a DC fast charger, they have some very high power supply capability with three phase power supplies. And all of a sudden you can get in 90 miles in only 20 minutes. So this is definitely the more convenient way of charging if we can head here, but the infrastructure is much more expensive. Extreme fast charging with it is now out as of 2018, and that's providing 350 kilowatt plus power supply. So the technology is moving there to make charging faster, but right now it's still expensive and there's not as much. A little bit about charging design. We mentioned the levels and that there could be multiple ports or single ports. Also, other considerations for folks when they're deciding to put these in their communities would be, are you going to have like a wall mounted or a pedestal mounted? When you start doing pedestal mounted chargers, you really have to think about a lot of different site conditions. Like what's the foundation, the base, a lot more about a utility conduit, and does that have to be upgraded and changed? So pedestal mounted take a little more energy and probably cost, so they provide flexibility. And then also, sorry, was someone have a question? Okay, and then also the last thing, one of the main things to consider would be whether you're going to have a networked or a non-networked charger. I think it's worth spending just a minute or two on what networked or non-networked chargers are. Non-network stations aren't going to be connected to the internet, and they're providing really basic charging capabilities. Often people who have these like a non-network level 2 today are offering those for free as an amenity, maybe at their business. But a network station is going to connect to the internet via cable or wireless. And it's really provides a lot of amenities. So it lets the station owner or site host manage who can access the station, controls how much it costs drivers to charge. And networks provide things like websites and apps for drivers that show you where stations are located. They provide payment plans and technology for taking payment. They can collect and store usage data and other things. So this is a list of some of the charging networks in the US right now. I will say that some of the most you'll see right now, I think ChargePoint has, actually, do I have yes, okay, I'll just show you this. ChargePoint here is by far has the monopoly on level 2 chargers right now. So this graphic is showing some of those main networks, charging networks, and then how many chargers there are out there for them. So ChargePoint is, I think it's at around 40% of the level 2 infrastructure in the country. And then, you know, it goes down here. One thing to note is that some networks, charging networks, they actually focus on level 2 versus DC charging. So Tesla has focused more on DC charging. You know, so you have to think about really what type of charger you're putting in and which networks can work with that. Just a little bit about features that come with a network. I mentioned the communication capabilities, but there's other things. For example, you can do energy monitoring. So you can track the energy consumption and report on emissions reductions, which would be really neat if that's what the discussion is going into implementation of these chargers. Also, you can do energy management. So you can optimize load management to maximize charging during low rate periods and work with the utility on that. You can do other good things for tourism and downtown areas, like you could have a display screen that provides communication and advertising. And also when you have a networked charger, you can do automated diagnostics, which could be helpful over the long run. And there's other things too, like technical support and everything with these networks. So this is my last slide, and I have about a minute left, so I'm getting there just in time. You know, how we're taking this study is we're going to try to identify in the Northeast Iowa region partners for building this EV infrastructure out and where we want it to go and being able to justify that. So, you know, one way, the initial way we did that was we looked at that EV registration data from 2019. And there are approximately 100 local EV registrations, plug-in hybrid electric vehicle registrations as well, in our combined regional area. And then we know that there are approximately 6, we think, public chargers right now. Well, industry reports have estimated that for every 100 electric vehicles on the road, there should be 20 to 40 public charging ports. So based on these data sets, that would mean that Northeast Iowa is at a minimum 14 charging outlets short right now, but at the high end, 34 outlets short. And this is just an initial analysis. We are actually working with a Luther College class, Environmental Studies 250, to do a little bit more in-depth research about how we can calculate the number and placement of stations. So I think as part of that study, we will be having kind of more explanation of how we're arriving at this proposal for Northeast Iowa EV charging corridor. But it does let you know, at least initially here, that we are short, needless to say. So, and this is for public charging. It's not to say that people interested, these early adopters who want to drive and are driving EV right now, can't get charging going at home and workplaces. So, and that is what we're also simultaneously hoping to work on. So that is my last slide, and I'm going to stop and answer any questions I can. Thanks.
So we've got a question in the chat. Does any of your data include the wheel tax that is or will be asked by the state of Iowa? It's really is this really significant in the overall cost of driving an EV?
Your real tax is kind of probably not the actual full description. Are you referring to the supplemental fee that was initiated in 2019? Whoever asked that? Or are we talking about the infrastructure policy that's going to be changing to charge owners of infrastructure? I think you're referring to the supplemental fee. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So as of 2019, yes, I'm trying to understand that. I didn't have anything in this presentation, and I do need to research it further. But I will give you a quick background that, and believe in 2019 or beginning of 2020, I think, the state of Iowa began implementing a supplemental fee, EV registration fee. So anybody who has an EV and you have to do your annual registration, they're going to pay a supplemental fee above and beyond what other vehicle owners would have. And I believe that is definitely impacting the cost for EV owners. And I've heard some people feeling down about that. So, but the idea is, and this is what all states are struggling with, and the policy discussions around it are, you know, you get a gas tax from vehicles and a road use tax, and if you no longer have a gas tax for electric vehicles, how do you make up those funds? And the supplemental fee is an attempt to make up those funds, and you have to be careful to not make you have to have carrots too. So we really, as a state, we have to be thinking about incentives as well and not just sticks. But right now, everyone's struggling to just think, if we really have this huge transition, electrification transition, how do we repair roads? How do we how do we do what we would do with the gas tax? So yeah, that was a very good question. And I think it is a real issue when we're considering the overall transition to electric vehicles and what that means for infrastructure, road infrastructure and other things.
Jesse Green asked if there are any plans to get a DC fast charger station in Decorah.
I don't want to say too much before it's finished, but I know that not a public one. I know that City of Decorah is working very closely with Alliant Energy right now to get 2 pedestal level 2 chargers in their downtown area. So I think 4 ports overall, and that seems to have a lot of momentum and will likely happen. That's just level 2, but they're putting the downtown area with the thinking that people will come, go to restaurants, shop, and they can charge while they do that, which could be a potentially good thing. They're thinking about putting it like near the co-op and I think maybe near the hotel. Not set in stone. I have heard in discussions that, again, I don't know how much of this has moved forward, but that Alliant, so the electric providers are talking with some employers in our area about DC fast charging. But I really don't know of a specific project yet that's moving ahead. But I think it's on the horizon, and it might not just be public charging. It might be also looking at like employers and providing that for employees.
How about taxes on chargers? Iowa proposed this. Do other states have this?
I want this to be part of my study, and I don't have any hard info on it right now. But in the coming years, possibly in the next few years, I think they want to tax selling this electricity through the chargers. So right now it's not. You're not if you're selling electricity by like the charge time or a connection fee, you're allowed to do that, and you're not charging anything right now. You can be a site host for these chargers. You can't sell it by kilowatt hour right now in Iowa. So that's one thing. But the state wants to have a tax on even having these chargers in the future. And I'm not sure if it must be, I don't know if it'd be based on kilowatt hours then. I got to double check that. But yes, they're trying to recoup some of this. And that could potentially deter people from having these stations. So how they charge fees is going to be something that's really needs to be considered. And it's possible to charge fees and try to recoup those costs. So.
Has economic impact on auto repair, auto parts, etc., businesses, and employment been studied?
Wait, say that one more time, Heidi. Sorry.
Has economic impact on auto repair, auto part, etc., businesses, and employment been studied?
Economic impact on those. No, we haven't. My sense right now is that there's little economic impact. And the reason is that there aren't a lot of these vehicles in the region right now. They don't need a lot of maintenance right now. So I've talked to people who have had an EV for years and barely brought it in for anything. So I don't think that there's a lot to find yet with regards to economic impacts, at least for like the auto industry in our region. I think if you looked at the more national data or maybe even statewide, you'd be able to understand some of those. Was that the question? Because I'm not sure I got it. It was kind of multi-part.
I think so. Dean, do you want to chime in? We can come back to it if there's
Okay.
Yes, I would. I guess I was questioning about the fact that the EVs do not require as much maintenance and parts. What will the negative impact be on existing car parts stores and traditional auto maintenance repair shops, et cetera, as EVs become more prominent? What is going to be the negative impact on those businesses and the employment associated with it? Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And I think it's worth maybe incorporating our study a little bit more, trying to understand impacts to specific businesses. or groups. And I think that could be an impact. I don't have anything to show you right now. I do think that could be an impact because as I stated, there's not as much maintenance. On the other hand, they're going to want to make this transition. Otherwise, they will become obsolete eventually. So these businesses, if they want to continue to serve vehicles, they're going to have to get the training needed to be able to service them, because eventually even an electric vehicle will need certain amount of servicing. So I think it's really important to involve them in the transition. Independent servicers, auto servicers, also, the actual auto dealers and whatever manufacturer training they would get. It's essential that they understand how to serve these vehicles and understand the different technologies so that they can come with us. Because if they refuse to do it right now, then, and as we make this transition, there's a certain amount of, it's going to be obsolete at some point. So you have to, not totally obsolete, but you're going to be left in the dust. So yeah, I think it'll impact them if we're just thinking about like the maintenance costs, but it could also have positive impacts if they become part of this transition and move ahead with us on it. So.
Amy Buska had was someone speaking? Okay. Amy Buska had a comment. After 1/1/22, the supplemental fee for battery EVs will be $130. Given the estimated cost of fuel, it looks and feels significant to me, which is true. What about a two-wheel trailer with additional battery packs? So you do have a 450 to 500 mile range. Charges at level 1 in the corner of a garage as emergency backup or as when needed. Also could be house power source and power outage, ?
Yeah, that I don't know how about that. I love that idea. I don't know if that would work or if that's a thing already. So I'll keep my eyes open for it. I will say that there is technology coming for, and I forget the actual term for it, for allowing the back and forth of energy between a car battery and a house. So basically the car battery acts as a generator. They are working on that. Yep.
Does a 480 volt 3-phase charging all the time drop battery lifespan?
I don't know that. I don't know the answer to that question. Might anybody else know? I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's an interesting question.
Amy Buska had something to add about the economic impact. She's read an article about how car dealers realized that the repair work would decrease while that is an important profit stream for them right now. She'll send the link to me if she can find it, and I'll send it out to everyone who registered for today's event.
Thank you.
Jesse adds, first generation Leaf said they should not fast charge more than once a day because it would stress the batteries.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, yeah, that's worth learning more about. Because you think that you just kind of think that's where that's the best case scenario is the DC fast, but I didn't realize there were some kind of technical downsides.
Am I remembering correctly that the Leaf says you shouldn't plug it in while the battery is like recently used either? Like if ideally you come home from work, you let your car cool off and then you plug it in?
I haven't heard that either.
I could be making that up.
Maybe. I'm interested from you guys in how many of you own an EV right now or a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle right now?
Jesse owns a 2017 Bolt. Oh, we've got people raising hands.
Yeah, I want to see them. I'm curious. Help me out here, Heidi, in seeing the overall picture. You can get me. I'm gonna stop screen sharing. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we can see the hands.
I see 4 hands raised. Oh, 5.
Okay. So I don't know what percentage that is of our overall group, but that would be fun to know. I know this regional EV work group I've been convening. I might be one of the only ones that doesn't own an EV or a plug-in EV. So I'm feeling out of the loop here, but I was impressed to see these early adopters and a lot of enthusiasm. So I so appreciate you guys.
Ben Grimstad commented he has a 2021 Ford Mach-E. Ooh.
We want to hear how that goes.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, it's faster than I need it to be.
So,
All right. Any last questions or comments? Things you love about yours? Leslie Sand says that we own 2 Priuses, both purchased used, 2012 and a 2014. One is a hybrid and one is a plug-in. Oh, and Amy Buska has her. Amy, how do you say that? My EV? It's a Mitsubishi 2014.
I call it the IMEO.
yeah, that's what I was kind of reading too. I mean, it's a funny one. And Amy's got interesting story because she has different levels of electric too for different uses. So how far she's driving. One's for in town and one's for when she goes out of town. And maybe in the interim, that's what folks will be doing, considering some of the range issues and cost issues.
So Jesse chimed in that he's had his Bolt at some events, and I wanted to put in a plug for that. So we, Winnebago Energy District does coordinate times for people to bring their EVs out places and have the public wander by and look at them. And if anyone is willing to do that and isn't currently on our list, feel free to chime in the chat or send me an email, and we'd love to put you on the list.
Heidi, I feel really bad that I didn't include my contact information in the slides, but is there any way that you could share that with people? Because I would love to hear from all of you. I mean, this is really a regional project and I hope to build excitement around it. So I encourage people to reach out. And I can also, we have a Facebook group for this project that we got going. And you know, we got 50 members, so we're getting there, but we do provide a lot of fun articles. We share articles with each other. And if anyone's interested, it'd be a fun thing to check out. And I can share that too.
I can send a follow-up email out with all the things.
Okay, sounds good.
Oh, Amy says the article that she mentioned is in the Facebook group.
All right, yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff there.
All right, I'm not seeing any more questions and we are at 1 o'clock, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I'm going to stop